Meeting professionals. It starts with trust. Now, I know I've heard you have to earn my trust. I've heard that before, and it's hard to give trust because it's unconventional. It's not something you just want to put out there on the table. But are you utilizing it to be convincing in a negotiation process? Probably not, because you've probably been burned before. You probably said, well, I've trusted them and it didn't turn out this way. Well, putting all that aside, you actually have to say it. You have to let people hear it. And when you say, I trust you, it becomes very effective. Today, negotiating is definitely a sensitive topic more than ever, but I believe because the economy that we've been in recently, which I call the perfect storm, we've been riding the waves so much that now it's time to swim. And that swimming part means we're going to do business with each other. And so today, negotiating has to do with the fact of doing more business with each other. And I think negotiating is where business lies within that area, and people need to start taking it more seriously than ever before.
How do myths and facts play into negotiations today?
Well, that's a very good question, because in the past it really has been part of the negotiation process. Today, it has nothing to do with negotiating, because the myths and the facts are pretty much people's opinion. It's their viewpoint, it's their perspective, their angle on how they negotiate. But today, it's about finding beyond that part about negotiating and the facts and the myths involved, because we can't rely on that anymore. And people have in the past. So today, it's about understanding each other and what that looks like through the values and experiences with each other, instead of this is the way I feel, this is the way you feel. And I mentioned today in the session that it has a lot to do with trusting each other and respecting each other, and of course having integrity involved in the negotiation process as well, because no matter what, negotiating can bite us in the butt. So it's a matter of really making sure that your behavior through a negotiation process is intact. If it's not, it'll really make it more difficult for you to get through a negotiation process.
So how do you determine who has a greater need during a negotiation?
The greater the need, the less the power. And the way you have to determine that is to be very aware of the negotiation process. When you hear something out of the norm, where they are struggling with something that they want or that they need, chances are they want it now. They want it, they need it. It's a very much of a process where that's why they're negotiating. But if you're aware of that and knowing how important that is to them, then you can have the upper hand, and that's where the power lies.
What would you say are the most important factors to consider when negotiating?
There's several different factors in a successful negotiating. I know I mentioned some earlier. I believe that it really has to start with you. You have to determine what kind of negotiator you are. If you understand that, then you're going to be going through a negotiation process in a much simpler format. You have to know that you can trust others. You have to know that you can respect others. And like I mentioned earlier, you have to have that integrity. You have to really know that you have a purpose of why you're negotiating, and knowing that it has to be a win-win situation. It will be case by case, but the power lies in each and one of those cases depending on what happens. But in the end, everyone has to win.
Hold it with 2 hands. There's nothing on it. As you can see, it's a plain 8 by 11 piece of paper. You ready? Here we go. Fold the paper in half. And I'd like for you to tear the lower left-hand corner. And then I'd like for you to open up your piece of paper, hold it up high with 2 hands, open up your eyes and share it with your table.
Finally, what do you hope that the people who attended the session take away from it?
I hope that they had learned that they're not going to be afraid of negotiating. Everybody seems to stay away from negotiating as much as possible and rush to the contract. I want them to enjoy the process and not be afraid of it, and understand that what they have learned throughout the years of their skills, their education, background, whatever that might be, can be put into that process. And therefore, when they go through a negotiation process and they win, then they'll feel good about it and want to do it more often.
Deborah, thank you very much for talking to International Meetings Review.
What did I just say?